The government has been defending its flagship benefit scheme, Universal Credit, after a damning report by the National Audit Office, which says the programme hasn't delivered value for money and that delays in payment are causing financial hardship. Universal Credit merges 6 benefits, including income support, job seekers allowance and housing benefit, into one single payment, which is paid directly into the claimant's bank account. The government says Universal Credit would bring a £34 billion return over 10 years. So far, it's cost almost £2 billion in investment and running costs, and some critics say claimants have had to wait weeks for their benefit to be processed. Well, the Employment Minister, Alok Sharma, has been speaking to our social affairs correspondent, Michael Buchanan, who asked him if the new system was causing some claimants hardship.
Well, as I said, we have advances available for people.
Yeah, but does it cause hardship?
And we have made sure that the amount of timeliness of payments have gone up. So what I would say to you is that where people need the support, it is available. And I would say to every single individual who's listening to this, who doesn't feel that they're getting the support, come and talk to us, come and talk to the job centres. Ultimately, email me or phone my office.
Does it cause hardships?
Well, that's an individual assessment.
What is your assessment? Do you think, based on the evidence, the totality of evidence that you have seen, that for some claimants, Universal Credit causes hardship?
What we have seen is that the vast majority of people are able to cope on Universal Credit, and in fact, very many of them, their life chances improve as a result of getting into work and earning more money. But for some
claimants, does Universal Credit cause hardship or not? I've asked you 5 times, with all due respect, sir. Yeah, and you haven't given me a straight answer. For some claimants, does Universal Credit cause hardship?
Well, Michael, you have to talk on an individual basis about people, and what you're not bringing me is an individual case, and if you do that, I'll be happy to look into it. What I'm telling you is that we have made changes which have now meant that people can get 100% advances up front on day one if they require, and that is making a positive difference to people in terms of the amount of money that they have.
Michael Buchanan talking to Alok Sharma there, and Michael has been hearing from those affected by the Universal Credit system.
Anderson Armstrong has been on Universal Credit since August. Before then, he worked as a chef and bought his bike. But when he lost his job, he built up debts, waiting 7 weeks for his first benefit payment, and says he now lives on £18 a week.
Go to the supermarket and then an hour before they close, they reduce food to the lowest possible price. You know, something might be £5 and you might get it for about, what, £1.50 or £1 or something like that. And so, you know, you shop clever, you box clever around that.
Today's report says Anderson is not alone, that too many people are struggling with Universal Credit. Last year, 40% of claimants waited 11 weeks for their first payment. 8% actually waited almost 8 months. There was usually an increase in rent arrears and the use of food banks when Universal Credit was rolled out in an area.
A significant minority, we think, are struggling to cope with making a claim online. They're struggling to cope whilst they wait for their first payment, and they're struggling to cope with the fluctuating income that they get on Universal Credit.
Despite that, the National Audit Office says the Department for Work and Pensions does not accept the benefit causes hardship. Ministers say they're building a flexible benefit fit for the 21st century, and that they're making significant improvements to the delivery of Universal Credit. Michael Buchanan, BBC News.
And I can talk now to Ed Boyd, a former Special Advisor at the Department for Work and Pensions with a focus on reforming welfare. He's now Managing Director at the think tank, the Centre for Social Justice, and he joins me from our central London studio. Very good morning to you. So this benefit system has been too slow to roll out, is causing hardship and isn't delivering value for money, according to the National Audit Office. A pretty damning report. What's your response to it?
There's quite a few things you've packed in there. I think the one thing to add into some of this picture, there's some really helpful stuff in this NAO report that shows how voluntary organisations should be working more closely with government to tackle the root causes of why people are being stuck out of work and making sure they get the support they need. But the one thing that's not been mentioned in your package so far is that compared with every other big welfare reform, this is one of the only ones that has come in and has meant that more people will be in work. All the evidence shows this, from DWP through to independent people at the IFS. More people will be in work. They'll work be in work for longer, and that they'll earn more money. And this is a huge benefit to a huge number of people who will be pulled out of poverty by being able to provide for themselves and their family. It's not to say it's perfect. No welfare system ever is, but there should be more balance, I think, to some of the reporting that we've seen on all this.
On the point that you've just made, though, the NAO is saying that the Department of Work and Pensions will never be able to measure whether it has achieved its stated goal of increasing employment. Do you fundamentally say that they are wrong in that contention?
From having read the report, its focus is not on whether it thinks there is a robust case to bring in that it will bring in 200,000 more jobs. The focus is on the fact that it's a forecast and that we can't know for certain that that will happen. What I would say is you look back and you look at every study and it showed that it is working in terms of seeing more people moving into work and those people earning more money. So the signs are positive. Whether it ends up being 200,000, 250,000, 150,000, to me, the more the better. But the fact that it's having a significant positive effect is something that should be welcomed as part of this. Now, there's far more they can do and need to be doing to make sure that really vulnerable claimants are getting all the support they need to overcome their barriers to work. But it's not this doom and gloom picture that we're seeing on the BBC Front News page today.
And our viewers may not know that you worked with Ian Duncan Smith in creating this system. I think it's fair that we tell them that. Therefore, perhaps it's something that naturally you want to say is working, even if it does have problems at the moment. But do you accept fundamentally that some people are suffering hardship because of this change in the welfare system?
Well, on your first point, all that we do as an organisation is based on how do you actually help people out of poverty. We work with about 350 grassroots charities around the country, gather evidence from them, and a number of them are saying this is a useful thing, universal credit, to make sure that they can help support their clients more effectively in whether it's addiction issues or debt issues that they're struggling with. To move on to your second point, I don't think that the way that it's been rolled out was perfect from the beginning. In fact, the way it was designed was such that it rolls out slowly and you test and learn the process as you go along, such that you work out something that's not working, you stop for a while, you adapt the model and then you improve it. So we were campaigning very strongly towards the end of last year for the government to be more generous when someone comes onto universal credit and make sure they're not waiting as long as 6 weeks, which they were back then, sometimes longer, before getting their first benefit payment. And to their credit, the government put £1.5 billion into the system to change that. Now, there are a number of the things that we're pushing them on to change and to improve, and that will make sure that more people have a positive experience with universal credit, and we'll keep pushing on that.
We've already talked about the issue of getting people into employment, one of the stated aims, and the fact that the NAO says that the DWP might not be able to ever really measure that. Let's talk about the cost. Another one of the stated aims, obviously, of this move to universal credit was to save money. Is there any guarantee that you are going to save money overall in the welfare system with this change to universal credit? Are you going to end up, or is this going to end up costing the average taxpayer more money?
Well, I mean, ultimately, in terms of the minute detail, it's worth asking the government on that. I can't speak for them. The one thing I would say is it's worth looking at the comparisons in this area. So it is a £2 billion investment, a big investment. And ultimately, it's about changing lives more than saving money from the Centre for Social Justice perspective. And that's the purpose of reforming welfare, to help people out of poverty. It's scheduled to bring in about £8 billion every single year when it's fully rolled out. And let's compare that to another project people might be familiar with. Heathrow's runway, the new runway it's bringing in, is going to cost £14 billion and will give £7 billion back a year. Let's compare those two business cases. That's not affecting, though,
whether someone can go out and afford to buy food, though, is it?
So you've asked me a separate question, which is it going to save money? And what I've set out there is with a £2 billion investment, it will bring in £8 billion of saving a year. So from a financial perspective, the numbers seem to be good.
Ed Boyd, Managing Director from the Centre for Social Justice, thank you very much for your time today.